Welcome back to Coffee with the Clerk and the Cowboy. This is episode 3, and we've been covering FOIAs, specifically in Adams Township. Stephanie has put in some FOIAs to the township, and she's going to give us a recap of episode 1 and episode 2, and then elaborate a little further. So, Stephanie, how have you been?
Good. Not well, fighting a cold, but
Oh.
who isn't this time of year, right?
Gloomy
Yes.
Michigan weather, at least this part of Michigan.
Yes. Well, we're here tonight. This is episode number 3 of a saga of a FOIA request that I submitted back in August. Seems like a long time ago, but I submitted a FOIA request to the Adams Township to request bank statements as well as property tax collection statements from 2010 to 2022. And after I submitted that, all laws were followed as far as I can tell, and I received the cost itemization back, and that came in at $1,263.
Wow.
As we discussed, the amount is absurd
Right.
for what should be a report coming from the treasurer's BS&A software on her computer and calling the bank to get bank statements. I think I mentioned I had to do that because of a treasurer that would not share bank statements with me
Right.
while I was clerk. So I called the bank no less than 3 times, and I had those bank statements within 20 minutes, no problem. So that part is just insane. So that contributed a fair amount to the $1,263. They were
And on top of it all, you asked for it electronically.
Yes, digitally,
and,
yeah.
and they did not respond with an estimate
correct.
that way.
Correct. They responded with it in paper copies, which by law they have to abide by my request
If they're
it's
able.
feasible,
Mhm.
which there's no reason in this case it should not be. And it caught my eye. $20 an hour for BS&A and software report, and $30 an hour for bank statements. The law very clearly states that the most they can charge is the hourly wage of the lowest paid employee that can fulfill that FOIA request. So $20 and $30 an hour seems very arbitrary to me. So when you get into the FOIA law, or I should say as I got into reading the FOIA law, what caught my eye is they can't charge anything for a FOIA request if there's not passed policy and guidelines that have been passed by the township board.
Okay.
So based on our experience while we were there, we were unaware of any policy and guidelines
Right.
that were in place in the township. To be covered later, I want to talk to the township about the Reuters FOIA request. The FOIA request that we got from Reuters newspaper right in the middle of the huge election duties my removal of election duties in the township. So save that for a future topic, but we had to address this FOIA issue. And you'll see more of that in video 2 if you go back and watch it. But we needed to have a FOIA policy and guidelines in place, and to my knowledge, we did not have it. So I FOIA'd for it, knowing that they couldn't charge me anything if they didn't have it. And what I got back, I anticipated a portion of it. I anticipated the August 2023 resolution that the current board passed.
Right.
As you recall, they put a motion on the table and passed a resolution that assigned the township clerk as the FOIA coordinator.
And that was the extent of it. They didn't elaborate beyond
Correct.
that.
Correct. All it was to assign who the coordinator was.
Right.
And meeting minutes confirmed that. I got that back as requested. So that was part of my second FOIA request, was for the policy and guidelines. So I got that August 2023 resolution, but interestingly, stapled to the back of it were 5 lines of something typed up, and that's where the $20 an hour came in, like it was FOIA policy. But again, nothing was discussed, nothing was passed, nothing was implemented in regards to anything with fees. So it's still looking like the $20 and $30 an hour is a very arbitrary amount.
Right.
So, excuse me. So I got the August 2023 resolution, the meeting minutes that confirmed it, and then to my surprise, there was a second set of papers, and that was the FOIA and policy guidelines for Adams Township that was dated back in 2015. So we didn't know about it, but that's good because, that's part of the legality of the whole thing.
The question comes to mind now that they passed one in August that doesn't include
Right.
everything that it should, but they didn't, as I recall, didn't state that it supersedes or
Right.
replaces.
I'm sure they didn't know about it either.
Are we operating under the both of them?
Yeah, and let's talk about that in a little bit because there's some concerns, and this is to help the board out too. But just to follow the line of thought on this, so now I have this other FOIA policy guidelines from 2015, which very clearly state that the township township clerk is the FOIA coordinator, and her backup is the township treasurer. So that's defined in there, as well as $10 an hour charge.
Which for that backup of the treasurer was quite a surprise, because during that debacle with the Reuters FOIA, Patricia Williams never recalled any of this. She never brought it to the board. She never stepped up to say, I'm the backup person.
Yep. She's been on that board consistently for 42 years. So at least it was defined, but in this case, $10 an hour is the fee. And with nothing else passed afterwards, it should still be the fee. But what was not included with that was the meeting minutes that passed that 2015 resolution. So I did a third FOIA, even though theoretically it should have been part of the second one when they sent me that policy and rates. But I sent a third FOIA in for the meeting minutes that passed that 2015, and I did get it. And there's no concerns from that from any reason. It was passed at the June 8th, 2015 township board meeting. So okay, we're good. So where does that leave us? So we have now in this situation a FOIA request that was submitted that came back with extremely high charge. You've asked the question before, do you think it's to prevent fulfilling a FOIA?
Right.
Is it to discourage? And I will say absolutely yes. I'm still involved in a lot of election groups across the state, and let's just say it's a common factor. Locally, statewide, and national. People are FOIAing because they're getting interested in their government, and the rates are, they're coming back with cost itemizations that are out of it. I have she was clerk while I was clerk. She resigned because of the chaos after all this whole thing. And I apologize because I should have gotten the detail, but she got a FOIA cost itemization of over $50,000 for something she requested since leaving her clerk position.
Wow.
But
from a township level or state level?
Yeah, she was at township level.
Right.
So,
and on that note, I believe it was you that told me that our county deputy clerk has instructed people on how do I want to say it?
Avoid,
yes. A FOIA.
Yeah.
Find fault with them. Find a
fault.
problem that you don't have to answer it.
Yes. So Mr. Dane did put out on the Michigan Township Chat Association very clear instructions to help other township clerks deny FOIAs, and in this case, his assistance to them was you make sure they have an address and a phone number, because if you don't, you can deny them. And it's wow is all I have to say. I mean, granted, it's the law. Okay.
On that note, in regards to Mr. Dane, and don't lose your train of thought, but he's running for county clerk. He's put his hat in the ring for that, and one of his campaign slogans is that he's honest. Well, that may not be dishonest, but it doesn't seem it doesn't seem to me that if you're trying to find ways to stop people from getting information, that's not very good scruples in my book.
What is there to hide?
Right.
If our governments are acting in the best interest of us and with honesty and truth, why is there such a problem with transparency?
Right.
Makes no sense. And I mentioned it in one of our previous episodes. If I were clerk and had received this, I probably would be able to fulfill it within about an hour maximum, and I wouldn't charge anything for it because it would take me nothing to pull a report and to call the bank. Nothing. I mean, I get paid, I was getting paid taxpayer dollars to represent. I'm going to help them out. And I would say there's residents in Adams Township that thanked me for my promptness and my response to what they didn't have to formally FOIA as far as meeting minutes or something. I had thank yous from township people on that. But again, this FOIA would not have been a difficult one, let alone a $1,263.
I might just add there, though, that those very same people, if I'm thinking of the right one, work to remove you and I from office.
That's fine. So where does that leave us? I was kind of thinking about it on my way home from work, and just a few questions that come to my mind. Why would a township board charge that kind of dollar amount here? Nobody in the township's making $20 or $30 an hour. There's probably not a whole lot in the county.
Awful lot that aren't. I would.
Yes, maybe that's a better way to say it. There's an awful lot that are not, but certainly not in that township. And why did they price out the paper copies versus electronic version? Law is very clear about that. And then, in regards to, as it continued down, why did the board pass a FOIA coordinator resolution versus a complete FOIA policy? Interesting to me, they were instructed, at least we were instructed while we were on the board, we needed to get that policy in place. Why just a half shot at it to put her in charge? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
My answer to that, what I believe is that they're just not doing the good job that Janice Roberts claims they are.
Don't make me laugh. So then that leads to the question, what's the township board going to do now that they've got a resolution in place that is only assigning the township clerk as the coordinator, when there's a policy in place that says it's the township clerk with the treasurer as the backup.
Right.
And this one over here has got the $10 charge, but they stapled on a $20 an hour charge here. They've got some
I would think by rights they should go
reconciling.
back and confirm what it really is, pass a third one that either does away with the first one and includes
Updates
everything that
it.
it needs to include.
Well, there's been 2 updates to FOIA law since then. They may or may not know of, but I'm sure the township attorney will advise them accordingly. But FOIA law updated in 2018 and 2020. But I guess the biggest concern is this arbitrary $20-$30 an hour.
Right.
Staple some paperwork on the back that was never discussed, passed, is not lawful, and think it's just going to fly through on this whole thing. And then, just not complying with the request.
Right.
Just the lawlessness. It just, what is there to hide? That's my question. What is there to hide over this little bit of a FOIA that should be not a big deal? So, there's so many other details to go into. I've learned so much about FOIA law here in the last month and a half. But why don't they want to provide it to a tax-paying citizen?
Right.
And granted, I have a little bit more of a vested interest because I had the privilege to work with Patricia Williams for a year and a half. I saw how she treated me in regards to transparency, which, to get ahead of ourselves, episode 4, I'd like to have that conversation about the role of a township clerk and a township treasurer.
Right.
So.
And that's something that probably the biggest share of the public really isn't that cognizant of.
Right.
And so it'd be great education from somebody that's been there.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But I witnessed what and how I was treated when I asked for these financial records as clerk,
Right.
in which I'm the second signer on the account. I have had a fiduciary responsibility, as does the rest of the board, to know these financial records, but we didn't on this board. It was very, very hush-hush. So, in summary, there's a 45-day window to contest the charges, either by way of going to the supervisor and appealing, or by filing in claims court, in circuit court. But philosophically, it's just, it bothers me. It bothers me, Mark, that, here we are supposed to, they're supposed to be representing us. We felt like we were representing and doing the best of our job. But the only way to hold them accountable is to take them to court. I mean, for goodness sakes, I've got a life. I've got a family. I've got a career. I've got things. Why do I want to spend every, cent in time to have to get this little thing? But, we're told it's redress our grievances. But I just have to ask, why is this necessary in this country? Why is it necessary in Adams Township? So I'm going to choose to shame the Adams Township Board on the handling of this FOIA. Shame them on there, and any kind of legal advice that they're getting that thinks that justifies that $1,263. And I'm prepared to leave it at that for now on this FOIA, for now.
So you've covered the FOIAs to completion, and we'll be looking at, again, in episode 4, the relationship between the clerk and the treasurer. And
I think that'll be a very educational topic for all involved, because it sure was for me going through it. So,
well, I thank you all for joining us again, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon in episode 4.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.